Well, recently I started watching a show called The Paper, which is sort of a sequel to The Office. It's done by the same people who did The Office in the same format. Now, my wife doesn't see the appeal of the show, but then again, she didn't like The Office, so there's not much help I can have for her in that regard. But the show is built around a small, struggling local newspaper rather than a paper company. And in episode 2, the new boss tries to help his employees become local reporters by teaching them the basics of reporting, the basics called the 5 W's. And in watching the show, I felt like this would be a great podcast episode as well. So to that end, welcome aboard to Finding Traction.
Guys ready?
When it comes to porn, are you stuck, spinning out, or slipping backwards in your life? If so, then welcome to the Finding Traction podcast, a show dedicated to those who are looking to gain recovery momentum away from porn and toward the life and relationships they have always hoped for. Now, here's your host, Vern Tomke.
Well, we're just getting started in the fall of 2025, and my question is this: where will you be in 1 year from now? Will you be taking strides in evicting problematic porn use from your life? In fact, where will you even be by Christmas? And if you're going to take strides, I have really seen, and guys have told me in my own life, I've seen it that I am going to need help. And towards that end, we are in the process of collecting a whole group of new men for taking our Finding Traction course. And each week, what happens is the guys watch a short Finding Traction video and then come together to talk about how to apply it to our lives. We're not experts, but we learn from each other. We also connect throughout the week, giving each other encouragement and connection. So if you want to watch a couple of free episodes on the link, just click on the show notes and you can join our Circle learning platform. Also there, you will find a whole slew of free recovery resources, as well as informations on joining our Finding Traction groups. If you want to connect with me, you want to ask about those groups, or you just want to have a free Zoom call where you tell me a little bit more about your story and I can maybe encourage you, I encourage you to email me at bandofbrothers.care@gmail.com. All right. Well, let's get back to these 5 W's. And the 5 W's of reporting are the essential questions that journalists use to gather and present complete, clear information. They help ensure a story covers the most important details, such as who was involved, who was affected, what happened, what is the issue, the event, or the action, when. Well, when did it happen? What was the date, the time, the sequence? Where did it take place? The location or the setting? And why? Why did it happen? Causes, reasons, or motivations. And I'm going to add a 6th one, which doesn't begin with W, but the question is how. How did it happen? How will it affect people? And if you take those questions together, a reporter writing an article will be able to give their readers a clear, simple picture of an event or an issue. So, for example, take the latest Cowboy-Eagles game, and if you watch that game, there was an incident on the very first play. Well, who was involved? Well, it was the quarterback, Dak Prescott of the Cowboys, and the lineman, Jalen Carter of the Eagles. What? Well, in that incident, Jalen Carter spit on Dak Prescott. When? Well, it actually happened on the very first play of the game. Now, this is important. Where? Well, it happened right in front of the referee. And as a result, probably the best defensive player on the Eagles sign was disqualified, ejected for the game. Well, why? Well, I guess nobody can get into Jalen Carter's head, but if you look at the picture, the sequence before that, you will see that there was a bit of a talking back and forth between Dak and Jalen, and Dak spits on the ground in front of Jalen Carter. So maybe Jalen Carter felt disrespected. But the bottom line is that might have been part of it, but maybe it was just a lack of self-control. So how did it happen? Well, it came out of his mouth, of course, but how did it affect people? Well, it affected the Eagles. They lost probably their best player for the game. And as a result, Dallas was able to run the ball a lot more successfully. Now, we're not going to talk about the final score of the game because that doesn't fit my narrative here. But that's a simple reporting of what happened in a completely, you can trust me on this, a non-biased way. Yeah, right, says all the Eagles fans. All right. So I want to take that and I want to apply that to our recovery. And let me just say this. As I work with guys, and, we check in every week in our groups, or I meet with guys individually. We talk about how their week went. One of the questions we talk about is, well, how did your recovery go this week? Tell me about what you were successful at, what you weren't successful at. And I know a lot of people, and maybe it's just the waters we swim in, want to go immediately to therapy speak. We want to get into your trauma. We want to get into your unmet needs. Maybe it's the therapist influence. We want to get into the deep issues of why you have these things. And it's not like I'm against that, because we do talk about that in our course. We actually get into some of those issues around trauma, issues around identity, issues around unmet needs. But for me, it's not the starting point. If you've heard my podcast for any period of time, I talk about taking your vehicle into the mechanics, and the very first thing he does is he asks you to shut your engine off so he can put a computer up to it. And what we do is we work hard at the beginning stages of this, breaking this cycle of this lather, rinse, repeat cycle. The aspect of relapse, remorse, the idea that I'm going to promise myself not to do it again, fall again, and just being caught up in this brain fog of this lather, rinse, repeat cycle. And that makes it very, very difficult to get any sort of clarity in what is going on in a person's life. So one of the things I do as a matter of precedence is I want to get super practical with guys. Now, I'll send guys to counseling when things keep coming up, and I'm not a therapist, but I want to start with the 5 W's. Years ago, me and my wife did a marriage course. We talk about that, and one of the books that was really influential was called Divorce Busting. And she was an avid practitioner of a idea in therapy, an approach called solution-focused therapy, which was all around focusing on future goals and practical solutions rather than past problems. So they were always looking at what's working, what's not working, what can you change to make things work better. And it really is this whole idea around, the definition of insanity. If you keep doing the same things over and over again, expecting different results, that's a recipe for failure. Now, again, I think it can be instructive at times to maybe look at some past things in our lives, But they would say things like in this book, or she would say things like, okay, this isn't working. You've had the same argument, or you've had the same result in your interactions with each other for the last 5 or 10 times. Next time, I want you to do something totally different. Because all you're getting is the same results. I want you to change your approach, change something, change anything to change the result. As they say in the old television ad, change the cheese, you change the taste. So, going back to this idea, we'll talk about, okay, I'm meeting with the guy, and let's say the guy talks about a relapse that they were involved in, that they relapsed over the week. Or maybe I get a report if I'm an ally on their Covenant Eyes, account, or they're sharing it. And within a group, we won't dive into it as much, but when I'm working individually with guys, at times we'll dive into this. Okay, well, I want to know, first of all, who. So who could be, for example, is there a name or an actress or somebody that you're chasing, you're following, that's causing problems? Is there a person at work that leads you down the rabbit hole? Who is involved? Obviously, you're involved, but is there another person? That's the problem. One of the guys I worked with, he unlocked a whole pile of change in his life in the positive direction simply by deciding the next time I see a pretty girl on TV or I see somebody and my curiosity goes, I want to find out more about her, I don't do that. I don't follow the next shiny object and try to do research on that person. And as I've not done that, it's unlocked a whole pile of new good results in my life. Okay, so what happened? What happened? And I was up after my wife went to bed. Well, that's a win. But I ended up going out and walking on the beach and ogling girls. I ended up spending 2 hours on Disney Plus trying to find things. I ended up, this is what happened. When did it happen? That's important. Was it early in the morning? Was it in the afternoon? Was it at night after your wife went to bed? Those kind of things. Well, where was it? Was it you were alone, you were at your office desk? Or is it you are in your study? Or is it you were sitting across from your wife? Where did this happen? And how did it happen? We're going to skip to the how because we're going to leave the why out for a sec. How did it happen? What was the device that you used? Did you use your tablet? Did you use your phone? Did you use your computer? What was the app that you were on? Was it TikTok? Was it Instagram? Was it Facebook? Was it YouTube? What was the app that you were down the rabbit hole of? And as you move into specificity around that, guys start describing those things. And I know at one point it's a little bit embarrassing to go, well, it was this. Well, specifically, what was it? Well, it was this app. Okay. Well, what device was it on? It was on this app, and a part of us wants to go, well, it's private, right? It's private, because it's embarrassing to say some of the specifics. Now, I don't need to know specifically what was all the search things you typed in or all of those areas, but you have to drill down into the 5 W's. Let's talk about the specifics of it. Because as you talk about the specifics of it, you start to realize, you know what? Every time we've been together and I have to describe what happened, it's starting to get a little bit old, isn't it, Coach? Because I described, for example, maybe the last 4 times that I acted out was early in the morning on Instagram. And the last 4 times was that way. Or late at night on Facebook. Or it was with my smart TV and I was doing this. And you start realizing after a while, I am falling into the same patterns. See, what I'm describing for you here And the approach that I take with guys is this: let us start with the low hanging fruit. I mean, let's not worry about the juicy apple at the very top of the tree that you think is going to taste the best. Let's just start with the low hanging fruit and let's start dealing with that. So, for example, let's just say, okay, it's Facebook, for example. Well, okay, let's say you have a smartphone. I have a Facebook app on my phone. Well, why do you have a Facebook app on your phone? Well, it's just easy. Well, you can have Covenant Eyes on your phone and you can access it through Safari, and then it will be recorded and your ally will see what's going on, and that will be a step forward. But if I do that, then I also have to have screen time, right? Because, without screen time, I could just add the Facebook app back on. Well, yeah, that's a good point. So what's keeping you from that? And what happens is you work with guys, you start to come up with little resistance points that as a coach I have to work with and say, okay, let's talk about that. Well, I really need Instagram because Instagram is where I get funny little stories and videos from my kids and my wife, let's say. And I don't really want to take Instagram off because then I'm going to lose that fun connection I have with people I like and who send me stuff. Okay, but let's recognize as well, the last 5 times you've acted out have been on Instagram. That's right. Well, I'll tell you what, Vern, let me just say this. I'm not going to act out anymore on Instagram. Well, how did that work for you last time you said you weren't going to act out anymore on Instagram? And so you have to have this conversation. And so what you say is, okay, well, I understand that Instagram is a way that you connect with family and friends. However, does that mean that you're just helpless with Instagram? Is there something else you could do? First of all, you could say, I am going to maybe use something like Tech Lockdown or something like the Freedom app, and I'm going to restrict my Instagram access for when I'm at home. Let's say my wife's at home and I'm at home from, 5 to 6 o'clock p.m. at night or 5 to 7 at night. And so if anyone's sending me funny little, Instagram things, I can check that stuff when, I'm with my wife and I'm there. And then at 7 o'clock, it goes back off again. Oh, well, you're telling me that means that 22 hours of the day I don't have it. Well, you're right. That's because that's not working for you, is it? So even in that situation, it can be a solution because you're dealing with practicalities. You're dealing with low-hanging fruit. Or let's say somebody says, okay, well, let's say you want to rest on the idea of I'm not going to. I've just told myself that's the last time I use TikTok. Let's say I'm picking on a different one. Okay. So what happens the next time you use TikTok in a problematic way, an unskillful way? Okay. Well, then let's bring in another tool. Let's talk about negative reminders. So, I'm fine with you saying, I really learned my lesson. Okay, but what if you don't? Then next time, what sort of negative reminder are you going to use so you have that in your mind beforehand? Let's say you say, okay, if I use TikTok in an unskillful way, I'm not sure there's a skillful way to use it, but we'll leave that alone. In an unskillful way, I am going to remove that and block that for 2 months. Oh, well, that adds some hefty weight to my willpower, doesn't it? The point is this. The point is when you begin to approach these 5 W's, all of that is to help people. And you're going, okay, yeah, but is this really going to set me free, you say? Well, let me put it this way. And again, I'm going to come up with a stat because my wife says I always make up stats. 75% of your acting out, well, it's actually 77%. 77% of your acting out is based on impulse, is based on accessibility, is based on an unguarded moment when you're just feeling off or bored. And if you use a simple, low-hanging fruit metric and you begin to become skillful in how you organize your life, you have now removed 75% of your problematic behavior. Is that worth it? I think most guys would go, well, heck yeah. I think that's a big step forward. Now, if there's the other 25% that's based on some of those deeper emotions, deeper unmet needs, deeper trauma, okay, well, now we can start bringing in a therapist. Now we can start talking about some of those slow build things, which really are behind the deeper reasons that you reach for this as your medication. But you're never going to get there without starting with these basic hows, whys, whens. It's the approach I take anyways. And hopefully that's of help to you. I really encourage us to get real practical, get real honest, we're not talking about, if your eye causes you to sin. I won't bring in Jesus' words here, but I do think it's very practical. Whatever it takes for you to step forward, what would it take for you to take those steps forward? It's time, as we move into the fall, as one of my guys said, it's time to quit playing dumb with ourselves and actually move towards experiencing greater freedom. Guys, it's great to hang out with you. We'll see you next time on the Finding Traction podcast.